LGBTQ community members, and
whereas THPRD stands with LGBTQ community members and is committed to removing barriers to participation to ensure everyone feels welcome, included, and able to express themselves fully within THPRD parks and services, and
whereas we are committed to eradicating discrimination and helping bring opportunities for health and wellness, social equity, and access to safe parks and recreation for all.
Now, therefore, the Board of Directors of the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District does hereby declare the month of June 2022 as LGBTQ Pride Month, and do urge all those in the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District to support and promote this observance.
Perfect. Okay, and we will move on to the next agenda item of audience time. I think we do have verbal testimony today.
President, here we have Carolina Martins joining us tonight.
Great. And then does Heidi do the timer or?
I'm fine doing the timer if you'd like.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Welcome, Carolina.
Hello, good evening. Let me know, is the time already counting?
I'll start it as soon as you finish your address for the record.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Once you say your name and address for the record, I'll start the timer.
Yeah. For the records, my name is Carolina Martins. I live at 6320 Southwest Lombard Avenue, Beaverton. My neighborhood has a significant number of BIPOC individuals, and I'm urging this board to take action to build an off-leash dog park that is walking distance from the place where I live. Many of my neighbors and I have dogs. Evelyn Schiffler Memorial Park is the closest park, which is about 22 minutes walking distance from where I live. And I would like to note that this is not a convenient distance if we consider the local weather, waves, and several rainy days. When I go to the dog park, the easiest way to get there is driving. Gas is very expensive, and driving has been adding to my living expenses. I also want to note that most dog parks are built in predominantly white and wealthy neighborhoods. And dog parks are very important to promote healthy and safe communities, and they should be accessible for all. They help us build community with our neighbors, have a safe place for our dogs to play and release their energy. I understand that the City of Beaverton's development codes puts more challenge to build dog parks, and that Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee has already asked city leaders for their assistance in addressing the city's code. But we need to ensure that BIPOC communities' voices are included in the process of building any new dog park to meet the needs of those who need them the most. And I would like to request this board to take action to build an off-leash dog park that is walking distance to where I live, so my community and I can also benefit of this type of resources. This will help my community not feel excluded and have a safe and accessible space for us and for our dogs. Thank you for your space, and your time this evening.
Thank you so much for your words. Do we have a response at all, Doug?
Yeah, I think Aisha can speak into this as, in terms of the process we go through with Parks Functional Plan, calling out dog parks, as well as, of course, challenges. Aisha?
Yes, hello, board members. I'm Aisha Panis, your Park Services Director. And this is a concern that we have heard raised within the Beaverton community. This is an ongoing concern for us and one that we have elevated both through our Park and Facilities Advisory Committee and at the staff level to the city of Beaverton, that current development code does not allow for us to do this type of work, and that it is a desire of our community members. We see more and more density in the downtown area, adding to the vibrance of Beaverton's downtown, but folks have pets and they have dogs that they want to exercise. And so we know that this is a concern. We feel fortunate that we were able to get the dog run built at Schiffler. We do know that this is a pattern that needs to continue, and we are working as we can with the city to raise this item to a point at which they can support making changes to the code that would make our ability to provide these amenities within the city limits more attainable. So it's an ongoing process. It's one we've talked to you about before. We appreciate the continued public interest and comment, and we will take that forward to the city.
Felicia, did you have a comment?
Just a quick question about the code. Is it easier? I don't have a better word right now. To build a dog park in unincorporated quickly than in Beaverton proper? And if I'm using the wrong words, just let me know.
Yes, each community has its own development code. The development code for Washington County, as it applies in urban unincorporated Washington County, does have a much more streamlined process for us to get a dog park approved. So that has been our focus area for the short term, is looking at those areas where it's a simpler process to permit a run or a dog park, knowing that we still have Beaverton that we need to resolve.
Thank you, Aisha, and thank you, Carolina.
Holly, did you have something to say?
I did. I just wanted to thank Carolina for coming out this evening, for sharing her views. We traded many emails on this topic. She has been a wonderful advocate, and I've enticed her to consider our advisory committee recruitment in the fall, because I think she would be an excellent candidate for one of our advisory committees. So Carolina, I just want you to know you have champions on this board who are all for seeing more dog parks. We've heard it through our visioning process. We've had some quiet conversations with the city. We've heard some positive things that they might deal with that development code in the next year. That could be a real game changer for us if they choose to take that action. And having community voices continue to articulate how important this is really makes a difference. And, you know, at a time when every budget dollar is stretched, it shouldn't cost twice as much to get a dog run in the city and take more than twice as long. There's a better way to get it done, and we are committed to making that happen for everyone in the community. And Carolina, your words about equity and thinking about where these are placed and really making sure we're serving the people in the community that need it the most. We hear you. We agree with you wholeheartedly. So I'm going to send you that email when we started advisory committee recruitment.
Thank you. All right, our next, I think Heidi's supposed to be running this. Our next testimony, I think, is from Wendy. Jessica, did you raise your hand?
President Tia, can I offer a point of clarification? I believe Wendy's testimony is for item 9B, Cooper Mountain Community Plan.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, never mind then. So we're moving. Do we have any written testimony? No, right?
We don't.
Okay, so we're done with this section?
Yep.
Sounds good. All right, then we will move on to committee liaison updates. Does anybody want to go first? All right, go ahead, Barbie.
Awesome. I got a couple of things to share. So the first, just want to offer my thanks. I was able to join our Memorial Day event hosted at our Veterans Park. And just thank you to the staff and our fellow American Legion and partners who put that on. It was an incredible event, even though it was upon arrival, sunny and glorious, and then the skies opened up and downpoured on everyone. But it was my first time attending the event. And so I just wanted to publicly give thanks and appreciation. I thought it was really respectfully done. So wanted to share that. From a committee update on programs and events, our last session, we were joined by Sabrina and got a preview of all of the incredible upcoming events that are on the docket for summer and fall. Everything from, again, concerts in the park to Big Truck Day, and really exciting knowing that for the past 2 summers, we've had to be so limited with what's with COVID and everything and what we've been able to do. So really exciting to see some of this bounce back. And also taking on the idea of having more of the smaller events in our neighborhood parks as opposed to many more of the larger events. And that's been really successful. And so continuing that through for this summer. To share that as well. The last thing, well, I've got 2 more things. Also just a shout out, I know we discussed this earlier too, but some of the new programs that our folks have put together. My daughter was a participant recently in the Black and Green Fellows, and I just wanted to give a shout out for that program and just what that means for the community in partnership with the Beaverton Black Parent Union. There was a friend, we had fallen out, just lost touch back in the 2nd and 3rd grade. And it's just really an incredible opportunity when you see those intersection points come again. And now here we are, junior year in college or in high school, and being able to be in community with one another. So I also wanted to just extend thanks for that great event. And the last, I would be remiss, I don't know, Alfredo and Director Moreno and Director Monteblanco, if you feel the same as well, but this does mark our 1 year kind of going around this. And it's been just an absolute honor to serve and to get to learn the staff and even just grow my appreciation and respect for all that this district does for our community. So I just wanted to give thanks and appreciation and shout out. And I feel so humbled that I get to have the privilege of doing this for another 3 years. So just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you. Alfredo?
All right. Quick update from the Park and Facilities Committee. Really just impressed with the people on that committee doing some really great work to champion inclusive playground equipment. And it's a really great group with smart and motivated folks. So an honor to be to watch them work and try to stay out of their way while they do some really good things. Also, just wanted to thank Doug for being so responsive and sharing with the board in the wake of the just unspeakable sadness that happened in Uvalde, Texas. I had asked Doug to just to get some clarification on what THPRD does to train staff, for the unthinkable. So, and I was really grateful and relieved that. While also, discouraged that we live in such a world where this would be part of our reality. Nevertheless, THPRD prepares its staff, its summer camp counselors, and folks who work with our kids every day, and our population. So, thank you for that training, and may we never need to avail ourselves of it. So, thank you.
Felicita, you're next.
Wanted to share that Director Moreno and I had a tour of the Mary Ann recently in downtown Beaverton, and it was wonderful. And I lost my little handout. I was like looking for it madly, but I'm going to email it to you. It was with Dan Vallier, who is the executive director of REACH and the housing manager there. And I encourage you all to go because we were a part of it. And it took lots of little parts to make that a reality, but we saw families just happened to be moving in at that time. It's pretty full. There's only one vacancy that just happened. But it's just, I think sometimes our work takes a long time, and sometimes we can feel disconnected from the work, but thanks to so many leaders like that, amazing property is developed and it's beautiful, and it's thoughtfully designed, and there's an amazing community space. And I know every time I share an idea, somebody usually chimes in with, yeah, we've been doing that for a year. But I'll share that they encouraged us to, continue to build relationships with our affordable housing community, because they have a lot of community space, like one that's like super accessible via the outside, and then one that's kind of more interior. But it's wonderful, and we do really good work, and it's wonderful to just see it and to all come to fruition. So if you want a tour, let me know and I'll get that set up for you, just as we continue to see how our work connects and how we build community. I want to give kudos to Director Edwards, because the BSD bond measure passed. And so that was really exciting, because we know we serve the exact same families. So really happy that passed. I'm really glad that this board took a position on that. And then I'll just share with Nature and Trails. They had a meeting recently. Cooper Mountain was a topic. That's a topic later for today. There was discussion of the functional plan as well as climate change. I think that's it. Thank you.
Heidi?
Yes. And yes, we're very happy that that bond passed. It does benefit our constituents and our service district as well. So just a couple of quick updates. With the Preschool for All pre-referral committee has been meeting. Still, well, moving into and continuing our discussion regarding a revenue mechanism and the program size, that scope for such a program for Preschool for All in Washington County. There are a few concerns moving forward, and that it feels like it might be a little bit of a rush, but we know a lot of time and energy has gone into this work and really developing a program that we can at least scope out to get started. And part of that might mean, looking and seeing what we have been looking to see what Multnomah County is doing and how that can inform us here in Washington County as well. So that group meets again tomorrow. And then we also, the pension committee. While great strides have been taken with our pension over the last year and some, unfortunately, this quarter, with inflation and the markets being as wacky as they are, it's taken a little bit of a hit for us with our pension funds, but not to worry, because you don't have, kick too quickly in this kind of situation, and the hope would be, over time, that things are going to balance out again. But it is a tough time with the markets at this point. So keeping our eye, and thanks to the folks that are helping us understand all of the ins and outs of the finances related to our pension fund. So that's it for me.
Great, thank you. All I have to add this month is that Director Moreno and I had a tour with Metro of Cooper Mountain Nature Park, which was wonderful. It was staff from both sides were there to teach staff from both sides also, because there's new Metro people who had never been there and whatnot. So we got a tour of the whole property. We got to walk it in different places. It was great to learn more about Cooper Mountain Nature Park, the potential, the hopeful expansion for it, the upkeep, and the reason why it was designed the way it was. I'm always like a tree person, like more trees, but then I also learned that we need open prairies. So where trees are not always the best part. So that was kind of a good lesson for me. But yeah, it was really great to know that such a great partnership of Cooper Mountain, in that having two government entities of Metro and THPRD can work so cohesively together to create something beautiful and longstanding that will benefit our community for so many more years to come is just amazing, and just shows the opportunities we have moving forward as we continue to grow with Metro and other government entities in the future. Heidi, did you have something else to say, or is your hand just not down yet? You're still on mute.
I know. I'm trying to navigate through my and unmute. Just one last piece, and it's not specific to, it's specific to the work that the staff has been doing, and being that it is Pride Month, I just want to call out and recognize the work that's being done with gender inclusion, and taking a look at how we are working to make sure that we are offering gender inclusive spaces and addressing those needs in our community. And so I know, Julie, you've been working with that, Julie Rocha, you've been working with that a lot. And I want to recognize that. I think it's very timely, and just make sure that that's out there. Kudos.
Perfect, thank you. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Yes, you do have a motion. As I scramble to get my screen back up in a very professional way. Thank you. All right. Yes, I move that the board approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I'll second.
Great, Jessica?
Felisa Monteblanco,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Barbie Miner,
Yes.
Alfredo Moreno,
Yes.
Tia Ping.
Yes. All right. Do you still have something to say, Heidi? Okay, just making sure.
I will stop talking.
All right, moving on to
Yeah, you cut out a little bit there, but GM report,
yes.
I think. So Julie is going to provide us an update on our gender inclusion training process, as well as a intro for us with a consultant who helped us through the process.
All right. Well, good evening. I'm Julie Rocha, the Interim Sports and Inclusion Director. And this evening, I'm joined by Reed Vanderberg, a local consultant and writer. Reed is a trans man and retired therapist who worked with over 450 trans or non-binary clients, their partners, and their families. He now focuses on consulting, writing, and offering trainings related to gender identity, various identities across the LGBTQ+ acronym, and the DEI work in general. Reed facilitated our staff trainings in May. Next slide, please. THPRD is just beginning its work around gender inclusion. We wanted to make sure that we trained our staff, so we offered a two-part series and made it mandatory for all part-time and full-time employees. An internal team is working on consistent policies and providing staff with the necessary skills and education to handle requests or situations that may arise. The process of becoming genuinely inclusive will take time, and we have developed some short-term and long-term goals. First and foremost, we must change our internal systems to be more welcoming of existing and future employees who identify as non-binary or transgender. Next slide, please. So I've received several emails and messages from staff expressing gratitude towards THPRD for offering the trainings. Many said it made them feel seen for the first time. Others have stepped up and are interested in assisting THPRD in implementing changes. So here are a few quotes on your screen, and you'll see additional quotes from staff throughout the presentation. And now I'll turn it over to Reed.
Well, thank you, Julie. Serving all the residents within the TRD boundaries means respecting lots of kinds of identity, from race and ethnicity to sexual orientation and gender. Now, I looked on the website and I did some research here. THPRD was founded almost 70 years ago, and it's not easy to change the direction of a long-standing organization at this kind of fundamental level. So I really commend you all for the commitment you're making to recognizing the need for such change and committing to the ongoing work. I mean, the words transgender didn't even exist 70 years ago. Now, in the 1950s, Beaverton had about 3,000 residents without nearly the diversity that we find today. So overtly recognizing gender diversity through policy and infrastructure change, that will go a long way toward creating safe spaces for people regardless of their gender identity. Transgender and non-binary identities, well, they're currently spotlighted politically in such negative ways, it's a rare and refreshing experience to feel a sense of belonging in a well-established organization such as this. Next slide, please. THPRD has dozens of programs spread out over multiple facilities, so it's going to take a long time to change all the associated infrastructure in relation to gender. It will help to involve others in the process, providing a mechanism so folks can bring to light the things that need to be changed. As the old saying goes, many hands make light work. It's hard to change pronouns in referring to folks, especially using they, them pronouns, so forgiveness of our own mistakes is also essential. Otherwise, you end up feeling it's too hard for me to change, and then people give up. Now, the public can help make the work light by providing some of the many hands needed, and many in the public may need some education to understand why all this is happening. So talking points, maybe a web page outlining the evolution of this process. These things can help cisgender members of the community understand the why of all of this, turning many of them into allies in the process. The work of changing hearts and minds never ends. I said this in the staff training. This is not a class where we learn stuff, we take a test, and then we're done. Social justice is a path through life. It's a shifting of the lens through which we view other people. So now I'll turn it back over to Julie.
Yeah, Jessica, can you advance to the next slide? We're off a slide, so just give you a minute to read that. Yeah, thank you. So the work outlined on this slide will involve staff at all levels and including the board. The work is extensive and ongoing, from organizational policy to accessing bathroom signage, from intake paperwork to the language used to address folks' groups. A lot of change is required, and it will take quite some time to be sure that programs, policy, and facilities have been updated. Beginning the work will focus on short-term goals that we can accomplish pretty quickly. We know that we have a lot of work to do and that we're going to make some mistakes, but we're willing to work through that. Reed, do you have anything to add?
No, just that the work is already, excuse me, the work is already being done. And I was really impressed with the commitment that I saw on the part of the staff members who participated in the trainings.
Next slide, please. So there's an exciting long-term possibilities for the expansion of THPRD's role in supporting and developing change, from partnerships with various community organizations. One example is creating opportunities to build bridges by offering gender-inclusive facilities and programs. It will foster trust within trans and non-binary communities. This is a long-term process because of the unfortunate historical experience of these communities is a temporary enthusiasm that fades over time, rather than a long-time commitment that leads to real organizational change. Over time, as THPRD continues the work and makes significant changes, trans and non-binary participants will increase as trust builds within THPRD's commitment. Reed, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, that pretty well says it all. I think we might be open for questions now, right?
Yeah, next slide.
Lisa.
Thanks, and nice to meet you, Reed. Thanks for coming to present with us today, and I'm so glad staff had a training and a conversation. This is great, Julie, and everyone who's working on this. And I know, as an impatient person, this work takes time, and if it's not done thoughtfully, it can cause damage, right? So I'm on my own journey, and I appreciate the constant reminder that this takes time. I'm curious with regards to kind of the league experience. I'm trying to think through, like, there's so many patrons who they don't know all the inner working of THPRD, right? And so they sign up for a soccer league, and if that soccer league isn't inclusive in their language, as an example, like, how are there? I'm thinking too back to our affiliate process. Like, how are we making sure language is inclusive? Like, do we have rules? Help me out, Julie.
Yeah, so we have formed an internal committee that's made up of part-time and full-time staff to actually look at that. So we're breaking up into groups. We have groups looking at the facilities, at single stall restrooms that we can simply just change the signage. We have another group just re-examining our activity guide with a different lens. We did that work a while ago, just making sure that we're not missing anything. And then we have folks looking at programs, right? Specifically softball or basketball leagues, and how we can clean up that language and make folks feel more welcomed. We know we're going to miss maybe a program that maybe is once a year, and we'll need to make those changes. And we might have to make changes multiple times to be truly inclusive. We're getting ready to hopefully roll out our policy here shortly with language for folks that basically, will allow folks to participate on how they identify. We have a team working with IS eventually, where we'll look at maybe putting some inclusive language at the bottom of receipts for patrons. So if, they have a question, and then it's just educating our public is going to be huge as well. So we have, a plan in place. We're working towards that. That group's meeting every other week right now, just to get the work started.
Great. And I'm especially excited about the language piece and the activity guide. I think, we use so much gendered language without thinking about it, and it's very rarely necessary, right? And we're all just growing and getting better. But I guess I'm just going to keep emphasizing the need to, I just want to make sure, like, when someone is like renting our facilities, like whenever we can, make our values clear. This has come up as a direct result of hearing directly from a patron, and it was not a positive experience for them, and that breaks my heart. I just want us to be better. This. We all want to be better. So I'm just going to keep asking the questions. I really appreciate this work. And thanks.
Thank you. I think Heidi has her hand up.
I do. And again, thank you, Julie and Reed, for all of your work. And, I think we here as board members, one of the simple things we can do, and I'm at fault for not doing this, is making sure our pronouns are represented, within our introductions and within our Zoom profiles as well. I think that's like the smallest, most simple way in which, as well as with our employees' name tags and things of that nature, because it does demonstrate that there's an awareness of this need and the desire to be inclusive within our community. So I think if we are just to take some really simple steps, and yes, mistakes will be made. I have a non-binary child and I misgender them often. So, that it's not to our fault that those mistakes. It's really a learning and growing opportunity. I also want to just call out the importance, I think, of younger people within our facilities having a greater awareness of their gender identity, and thinking about those kids that are in our programs and how that will play out as well. Oftentimes, those are the kids that are bullied, and those are the kids that are maybe misunderstood, and really identifying how we as program staff and allies can help educate our community. And Reed, I loved your recommendation. Even, it seems really simple, like a simple web page, but really talking about why are we doing this work, and what do these things mean? I know that within my own work, we have something similar, because we have community members who ask, why are you asking this? Or why are you doing this? And we're able to easily point to something rather than having that awkward, like, what do I say? So thank you, team, for all this really good, important work.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions? Okay, I did have a question. As we do like the sports affiliates and all of that kind of stuff, is the policy that we develop, is that going to be disseminated and required by all sports affiliates, like recs, all those, to incorporate the same policies and procedures that we have regarding?
Well, in the new affiliate packet, we addressed the DI work. That work is going to come from those governing bodies like OYSA for soccer, which is Oregon Youth Soccer Association. So we don't have anything specific saying that, they will follow that specific policy, but we will be reviewing everybody and updating that section every 3 years. So that's something that we'll have to revisit.
Okay, so I guess my thing is, like, let's say if like a trans girl or boy wants to play on the team that they identify with, is that something that's required for those, or is that onto
Yeah,
their?
so when we were speaking with soccer, right now when they get those requests, participants are allowed to play on how they identify.
Okay.
And they're also in the beginning of their journey as in their organizations to also address this concern that is arise. And that was how we started our work. We were getting requests and we wanted to have consistency and become welcoming and make sure that any facility that folks come into, they can participate. And so I think that, those agencies and organizations are still working like we are to be gender inclusive.
Okay, I just want to be proactive so that
Yes.
I don't want to be reactive for when something comes up and somebody complains because they're not feeling welcoming by an affiliate. I want us to nip that in the bud and just be like, this was our policy. Everyone who's going to be renting a field needs to follow this policy, right? To make sure that all these kids feel safe in whatever sport that they're going to play in whatever gender that they identify with, whoever they're going to be most comfortable with. Excuse me. Okay, any more questions? Great. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Reed, so much for helping us with this and helping us better to grow and understand. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Doug.
We've got the Cooper Mountain Tour. You provided a very nice lead in, Tia. So I think Aisha will be able to move through this presentation quickly so we can get on to the next agenda item.
Perfect.
So while he was muted, it was strange because I could hear him through the wall right over here, but just a treat for me. I am Aisha Panis, the Park Services Director. My pronouns are she, her, and I am excited about a recent tour that we were able to give at the Cooper Mountain Nature Park in conjunction with the park's owner, Metro Regional Government. So on this slide, you see a few of us on one of the trails down to the sort of southeastern corner of the park, down to the small meadow. And so I know that not all of you were able to attend with us and just wanted to share some of the photos from that visit. So on the next slide, I want to show you kind of the overview of the park. And so this is about 230 acres south of Kemmer Road on the top of Cooper Mountain with amazing views to the south and to the west. And so we have a trail network out there, about 3.5 miles of both paved and unpaved trail. Primarily unpaved trail. We have a wonderful nature house up at the top of the hill. And this site is very unique because it has such a mix of different landscapes. And so we do have conifer forests. We have beautiful prairies. You'll see there's the big prairie kind of in the center and little prairie off to the east. And that's on the right side of your screen. And then the oak woodlands are a very unique and wonderful feature of the site. So on the next slide, you can see that it is a very popular site. And so we do trail counts out at the site or visits to the site. And so what you see is sort of an average that we had in terms of visitors between 2016 and 19 in that blue line towards the bottom. And that was roughly 70,000 per year. When 2020 hit and there were very few places we could congregate indoors, people came to the nature park. They wanted to be outdoor. They wanted a respite from what we were all going through. You see that in March, that orange line peaked really high at 13,971. And a couple months later, it remained high, over 14,000 visits to the park. We did see a little bit of dip. You'll see in September of 2020, and you may recall that we had some terrible, terrible forest fires at that point. So was not the place to be. We were all kind of hunkering down indoors for a large part of that month. But what we have seen in the following year, 21, we saw reduced numbers of visits, and we think that that's because more things were open, people had more opportunities, but it still is higher than what we had seen in the years prior to that point. So it is a very well used, very well loved park, and it was exciting to be able to share kind of this information when we were out at the site. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this was a joint tour that was offered to members of the staff at the Metro government, as well as their electeds. Our electeds, you see we've got Doug there in the center, Tia next to him, and Alfredo to her left. So we had a grouping of our staff. We had a number of staff from Metro that were able to come out and talk about how we break down responsibilities out at this site and how this partnership has flourished since the park was first opened in the mid-2000s. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, Metro is the owner of the property. A lot of land was secured with Metro dollars, and they provide sort of that habitat guidance at a very high level. They have land stewards that we work with. They have biologists and scientists that help guide how to treat and care for the different species that are there. But on a day-to-day basis, it's our THPRD staff that are providing maintenance and operations and are running programming up at the site. So in this picture, you see a group of us going down to that little meadow site down along the pathway here. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, it's a very unique site. It's a beautiful place. This is a photo down at that little prairie. And part of what makes it so special is because of the very increasingly rare species and habitats that we have. These species are acknowledged in state and regional and local conservation strategies. We know that these are important things to keep flourishing in our environment. There are some declining species that are very important to protect. And so having a site this size is critical for maintaining those species and ensuring that we've got this gem of a location that can continue to be that respite for our community. Next slide, please. Here are a few of the photos. While we didn't see as many of these wildflowers, these were shared with me by Bruce Barbarash, our Nature and Trails manager, who assures me that they exist on this site, just not the day we were there. What we did have was just incredible views, and I think Alfredo was with the group that I was with, where we walked from Little Prairie to Big Prairie, and we were invited, all of us as a group, to just breathe. And we took a minute, and I've shared with others that this felt like an uncomfortably long minute for someone who doesn't pause very often. But I managed it. I did it. And it was the most refreshing thing. And I highly encourage, if you haven't spent time out at Cooper, to go have that moment. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment to have. So next slide, please. That work all the time in partnership with our counterparts at Metro to ensure that we've got this great site protected. We talked at the site about the dream that was for this park to be much larger than it is. And, we are dealing with willing sellers. We're dealing with competing interests. We were there listening to the bird song, listening to the wind go through the conifers, and we could hear happening to the west in the quarry, and we could hear excavation happening to the east where the new South Cooper Mountain development is happening. So it was an incredible moment to spend out at the park, to understand what this site means to us, what it means to the flora and fauna of our area, and what it means to be on what used to be the outskirts of the Beaverton area and now is becoming much more incorporated into Beaverton. Next slide, please. So here again is that view on the big meadow, talking about management strategies, talking about what we do to care for the site. We had lots of thoughts shared. It was a great opportunity to talk with those counterparts at Metro, talk about the future for the Cooper Mountain Nature Park. I know that on the next slide, you'll see just the close of our tour as we talked about these things, as we talked about what this site means for both agencies and for the community. And I know you'll hear more about Cooper Mountain in just a moment, but I did want to share this series of slides and photos with you just so you could get a glimpse at what we experienced that morning on May 13th. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, we can move into our next Cooper Mountain topic.
Any questions? No questions, just beauty. And we all should go as a team and just breathe.
Okay.
Go ahead, Aisha.
Yeah, I think we're ready. Aisha, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I think we actually have Gary, who is going to introduce our special guest from the city of Beaverton. So if you would like to do that, Gary, now is the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us. I'm Gary Keck, the district's Design and Development Manager, and my pronouns are he, him. And tonight with us is Cassara Phipps, the city's senior planner, and she'll be giving us an update on the Cooper Mountain Community Plan. And we'll take any input you may have at the end and take that back to the project team. As most of you know, the district's been a partner on this project for a while. We're on the technical advisory committee for the project, and we've been working with the city on this since March of 2020. And recently, just so the board knows, most of you probably know because you were there, but Cassara recently provided a similar presentation to our joint advisory committee about a month ago. So what I'd like to do is hand it over to Cassara, and at the end, we'll take any questions or comments you may have. So, Cassara.
All right, thank you for the introduction, and also thank you for the opportunity to be here with you, Shin. And also thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight to provide an update on the Cooper Mountain Community Plan. If we can go to the next slide. So this map shows the project boundary outlined in gray. Cooper Mountain is located at the southwestern edge of the city. So just above the South Cooper Mountain area, the school icon that you see on this map is Mountainside High School. The area is now inside the region's urban growth boundary. It's roughly 1,200 acres in size, and it includes both Winkleman Park and then a portion of the Cooper Mountain Nature Park. The city of Beaverton is planning for at least 3,760 new homes in this area, along with roads, trails, parks, commercial areas, and other public facilities that help make great neighborhoods. The project uses a framework of racial equity that impacts not only how we conduct our public engagement, but also how we do our technical work. Next slide. Right, this slide shows the project goals. Each theme or topic of the goal is shown in bold. I won't read through them all, but just wanted to highlight several of these goals that may be most relevant to THPRD. First is to protect, connect, and enhance natural resources, planning for resilience to climate change and other natural hazards such as wildfires, providing public facilities for safe and healthy communities, that includes parks, and also supporting transportation options. That would include trails. Next slide. Right here we have the overall project timeline. As Gary mentioned, the community plan kicked off in early 2020. We spent much of that first year really learning about the area, doing inventories, market studies to see what existing conditions and opportunities there were. We're now in phase 2, which is the community planning phase, to determine the outcomes that we would like to see for this area. So this community planning phase 2 really provides the basis for the next phase, which is developing the actual community plan document. So that will have land use policies, we'll come up with our land use and zoning districts. We will also likely propose changes to our development code to help implement the community plan and develop an infrastructure funding plan as part of that work. So phase 3, we anticipate will conclude in spring of 2023, and then annexation and development would occur after that point. So it's a little different process than how it unfolded in South Cooper Mountain when the area was actually already inside the city when we led the planning effort. Next slide. Right, we recently completed our alternatives evaluation, where we looked at 3 different ways that the city could plan for housing and transportation, commercial uses, and natural resource protection. This alternatives process was intended to help us identify trade-offs, because we can't kind of have everything. It's this balancing act between those project goals. So we asked community members and stakeholders to share which features of each alternative they like best, and that helps us develop a preferred approach, which is what we are currently doing. Next step, or next slide. In addition to the project advisory committees, we engaged other stakeholder groups and committees, including property owners and residents, natural resource experts, Mountainside High School students, City's Bicycle Advisory Committee and Climate Action Task Force, and Inclusive Housing Cohort. And we also provide an update to THPRD's Joint Advisory Committee. In partnership with Unite Oregon, we hosted 3 language-specific community events in English, Spanish, and Arabic. We held an online open house event and survey, and also tabled at the Branch Library location and Cooper Mountain Nature Park. Next slide. So building on input from community engagement as well as early guidance from our city council, the project team is in the process of drafting a preferred approach. So tonight I'd like to provide a brief description of where we're at and would welcome your comments at the end of this presentation. I did want to note that the maps you will see on this and following slides are from the 3 plan alternatives. So the map for the preferred approach is still under development. So for land use, we anticipate a total of 4,500 to 5,200 new housing units. This would include middle housing types, such as duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, and cottage clusters. We will plan for housing variety within each neighborhood, and that includes multifamily housing that's shown in orange on this map. The preferred approach will set a target of 10% of the total housing units, so 450 to 520 of the housing units would be regulated affordable housing. And our goal would be to provide both a mix of rental housing units and home ownership opportunities. The preferred approach includes 2 commercial areas. That's shown in red on this map, although the location of the southern commercial area may end up on Tile Flat Road. And then we're also exploring ways to provide opportunities for commercial uses, really small scale commercial uses within residential neighborhoods, hopefully providing opportunities for entrepreneurship as well. The preferred approach will also include flexible development rules to help encourage retention of existing mature trees, and especially those that are near significant natural resource areas. Next slide. All right, on to parks. The preferred approach includes 9 new neighborhood parks with a minimum size of 2 acres, and total of those 9 parks is 29 acres. We have plans for 1 new community park in the area, subject to land acquisition and funding, 2 urban plazas that would be located near those commercial areas, as well as trailhead parks. we spoke a bit about the nature park earlier, and I did want to just mention that the protect and restore portion of that Metro Nature Bond does identify Cooper Mountain as a target area subject to the willing seller process. So our team is working closely with both THPRD and Metro staff to make sure that the community plan is informed by that nature bond program process as well. The light green areas that you see on this map include different types of natural resources. So not the parks, but the lighter green. You may notice that the area immediately south of the nature park, kind of that southeastern corner, is blank or undesignated. So the city is still in the process. We're considering what type of residential development could or should be allowed in that area, given that it doesn't actually have significant natural resources, but is in a sensitive area. Next slide. We're also updating the trail framework map to align with the new road network from the preferred approach. So upon more detailed study, we realized that the trail crossing from Summer Creek, which is shown in this red circle on this slide, is likely too steep to construct. So we suggest removing this trail segment that would cross Summer Creek. However, the preferred approach would add a new trail crossing or connection that's circled in the yellow on this slide to connect the neighborhood along Grabhorn Road to areas south of McKernan Creek. And then I also wanted to point out the McKernan Creek Regional Trail that's shown in the kind of thicker dashed line on this map that would connect the southwestern corner of the project area all the way up to Winkleman Park and even Kimmer Road. So really the kind of spine or central trail through the project area. And it would be also connected by a series of community trails from the regional trail to each neighborhood. Next slide. All right, now we have natural resource inventory. This map shows creeks and riparian areas that are in the various shades of blue, as well as upland habitat areas that are shown in green. The preferred approach would connect wildlife corridors and high quality habitat areas. And we will also incorporate crossings for large wildlife where roads or trails do cross the creeks. There is a new road crossing included in the preferred approach in the upper McKernan Creek area. There's a, as we saw on the last slide on trails, there's a trail connection on the lower McKernan Creek section toward Grabhorn Road. And then there are existing roads in place that are significant barriers to wildlife movement. So this project would seek to improve wildlife crossings at both 175th as well as Grabhorn Road. Next slide. All right, now we're on to next steps. Over the coming months, the city will develop a zoning map as well as draft code concepts that would help implement that preferred approach. We're transitioning into our next phase of engagement on the preferred approach, and we'll head to our city council for work sessions this summer. We have two sessions scheduled, one in July and one in August. And then we'll also coordinate with our partners on the funding plan. We have cost and revenue assumptions to develop for both parks and transportation. So THPRD staff are taking a part in that. And then we will reconvene with our project advisory committees in late October and would love to return to the board this fall as well to provide you with a refined preferred approach. Next step, or next slide. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to hear any feedback that you have on the project with the preferred approach or answer any questions you might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kasara and Gary. Before we take questions, I do want to make sure that we remember that Wendy is here and to provide testimony. So let's hear from her first and then move on to questions and board discussions before we close out. Wendy?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. And I did submit written testimony, so you already have that. But for the record, my name is Wendy Kroger. I live at 12030 Southwest Settler Way, Beaverton, Oregon, 97008. And it's very nice to be here and see you all again. It's been a while. I wanted to thank Casera. She has been a gem to work with. From our perspective, we're a community group, and she has been willing to give her time, her expertise, and so we really appreciate that. So that's very nice, because sometimes in the past it hasn't been that good. So we want to thank Casera for that. I wanted to go back. I don't want to reiterate the written testimony that you already have, but I wanted to go back 27 years briefly to the 1995 passage of the Metro's open space, parks, and streams bond measure, because it provided funding for acquisition of land in the Cooper Mountain target area. And acquisition goals at that time, acquiring between 400 and 700 acres. We now have 231, to protect and enhance Cooper Mountain's unique biological diversity. It was also to protect water quality of the Tualatin River by protecting, and it calls out specifically headwaters of tributaries, protecting, it's just spectacular scenic vistas, as we saw from some of the photos. Thank you, Aisha. Both into and out of Cooper Mountain, and also providing linkages to Cooper Mountain to other trails, greenways, parks, and community facilities. I also appreciate that Aisha pointed out how many people visit Cooper Mountain. I think a lot of folks just think, oh, it's kind of out there somewhere, and maybe 10 people go or something. But when you look at the number of visitors, for example, last year, 94,296, and you realize that the population of Beaverton is just about the same, that's like everybody from Beaverton went there. So that's a lot of folks. So I think that's important to know. The second thing is that we presented information to the Nature and Trails Advisory Committee, and we're very well received, and we appreciate that. And so I guess what I wanted to just highlight at this point is two things. One is we are continuing to hope that we can find a way to have an overlay, that the city can do that, and we'll work to help with that. But we also, and I'm going to read this part just so that I don't mess it up. So what we're asking of the THPRD board is that first, please formally state your support to the city for the expansion of the nature park within the community plan, such that the expanded park will incorporate those natural areas within the community plan boundaries that are currently outside the nature park, particularly riparian zones, wildlife habitat, corridors, and areas with mature tree canopy. We also ask that you state your support for establishing sufficient development setbacks, given the fragility of the nature park and area-wide walking trail connectivity, corridors linking the nature park with Winkleman and Jenkins Estate, and a restriction against new roads bisecting natural areas.
Time.
Second, I'm sorry?
I'm just calling out the 3-minute mark.
Okay, can I finish my second if I go fast? Okay. Second, we ask that you use your connection with Metro to encourage Metro to expedite its movement forward in securing the lands in question from willing sellers before the opportunity is lost. While THPRD likely has some funds to contribute, it's Metro's 2019 natural area bond measure that possesses the bulk of the acquisition funds necessary. This makes the city and THPRD dependent on Metro for meaningful acquisition progress. So thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you so much, Wendy. All right, now we can move to questions and discussion. Felicia?
Thanks, Wendy. And welcome, Casera, and nice to meet you. Thanks for that presentation. I really appreciated hearing the commitment to climate resilience, and then you mentioned tree canopy. Can you talk a little bit about how those two interact? Because I have the heat dome on my mind. We lost community members across the region. And so as we build anything in the future, how are we thinking about keeping neighborhoods cool?
Yeah, the natural resource areas are definitely a big piece of that, but then also how do you integrate green spaces and nature into the built environment? And so we are looking into different, techniques and best practices for stormwater facilities. We've talked a lot about kind of the LIDA or low impact development. And something that the city doesn't have in place right now is that canopy target or canopy goal. So that's something that would be, coming up with a completely new section of code if we want to implement that.
I know there's been some great research out of PSU and doing some looking at the heat dome and I'm pretty sure the Lentz neighborhood, which doesn't have much tree canopy, right? And how there's like, my goodness, like a 20-degree difference. So thank you. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you for the suggestion on the PSC research.
Any other further questions or discussions? I don't think so, but thank you, Kasara, for making sure that all of our groups work together so closely and so willingly to create something it's going to take everybody's input and everybody's expertise to make sure we create these communities that just thrive, and for the people who live in it, but also for the nature that we're kind of overtaking and stuff. So thank you for all of your work. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's it for the night. Double checking, Doug. Is that it? Okay. So thank you everybody for tonight and being on. Thank you staff for all your time. Thank you to my fellow board members. Hope you guys all have a great night and we are adjourned. See
Thank
ya.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.